Chai.
There we go.
Oh, look at
My
that.
little tea bag. It's an Assam and Darjeeling blend.
Yum.
From Murchie's in Victoria, British Columbia.
Is that a one-use bag, or can you reuse it?
Oh, no, I've never.
Sorry.
No.
Oh.
Hello, Graham.
Oh, Faith, it's good to see you, my dear.
You as well. And welcome back, everyone, to Tea at 3. I'm Faith Schmidt, and this is Graham Kerr. So last week, Graham brought up the idea of waypoints, moments of rest and recuperation in your day in order to keep your mental health on a level where you can continue to process the information that's coming down in the waterfall.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about this week. Welcome everyone, and welcome Graham.
Wonderful. How long ago is it now? Is it 2 weeks, I think, when I showed you that little crack in the pavement where the walkway, and how at the corner of it, where it didn't get driven over so often, there was some grass that was beginning to grow there. Well, I took a couple of seeds out of my rather special little pack of organic seeds for greens that I want to cook for myself. And I put those 2 seeds into that gap in the pavement and tamped them down properly so as to make sure they were okay. And then walked away from that. And today I went past it, and it's actually germinated and come up. The thing is that I think that what I was putting in there was arugula. In fact, I know it was arugula because it was in the package. And what I think has come up is, in fact, not arugula. It's a dandelion. And so I was somewhat disappointed, and I was thinking to myself, it looks the same. You know, a dandelion leaf can look the same, and I think we've got a shot of it now so you can see that. So I broke a piece off and tasted it, and it was far too sour for arugula. Arugula is a bit spicy, so I was somewhat defeated because I'd sown arugula and it had come up dandelion. So I wondered if what I had done had done any good. And yet when I step back and look at the division in that gap, it's been filled with this plant. So the fact that it's come up as something other than I thought that I was planting was hugely important to me. Do I think that the future of mankind has got something to do with my selection of a particular idea that I'm putting in the midst of an obvious need for new life and resilience? Does it have to obey to what I think? The fact that it's come up at all says to me that there is a divine providence of wanting to fill in the gap with life. That's what I feel. So I just wanted to share that with you because that's a part and parcel of what I've been going through this week, which has been horrendous. I've had one of the worst weeks of my life this last week because I cannot take any longer the beating over the head of people by one group of my nation beating on another group of the nation and calling that law and order. I can't. Now, I mean, there can be people who say, you really don't know what you're doing. And I'm sorry, this is about you and it's about me. And if we can't be real with each other, I don't want to apply to the rest of the world. I just want to share my life with you. So it's been really difficult. And I've had to shut the door on some people I really like a lot and I've spent 10 years with, because I don't like the study, the biblical study, that they are doing at the moment. Now, it's biblical, and I believe it's God ordained. It's just not in season for me. Those seeds that are being sown in that study into my divided life that I have at the moment is not coming up as I had expected. It is coming up in something that I really didn't expect, and it's distracting. So that was just part of the reason why I mentioned that to you. How did you get on with this? Because we've talked about this before, the idea of a rest stop and sort of taking time to be restored. Yeah.
Yeah, I really latched on to what you very briefly mentioned last week, which was the idea of eddy, or like backwater in a river where the salmon go and take a break. That's also like where you stop when you're river rafting. Like if you're rafting or kayaking in a group, like in order to stay in a group for safety and like to continue on down the river, oftentimes someone might get in a faster current and end up way far ahead, and they'll have to like pull over and like wait for everyone to catch up and kind of come back together and move forward. So I liked applying that to those times of rest where maybe you've pushed too far forward, or maybe there's just the current's too fast and you just need to like hop into the backwater and take a break.
Right.
For me, those breaks are, well, I'm not a very meditative person. The being like going off technology and like being completely silent is what causes my brain to like spiral into more anxiety. So sometimes my like little rests and waypoints are like currently my husband and I are rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is like a cartoon that I absolutely loved as a kid. And so like having that like peace and nostalgia in like a good little show, it's just like 20-minute little episodes, to just be like, it's investing enough that it like calms your body, because you're not like thinking about a million terrifying things at once. You're just like, oh, I remember this show. Like, this is great. So those have kind of, that's what I kind of think of as my little like mental breaks in between things.
Do you know, darling, I've got the feeling, sorry calling you darling, I hope Peg doesn't mind it. It's just a British thing, you know. But you said you're not very good at meditating. And I would go along with that 100%. Just something that I've never done. And I picked up a little book. The author's name is Laird, Laird, and it was called Ocean of Light. It's a tiny book and interesting. And it's dealing with something that's been going on since the first century with desert fathers. So they were called mystics. And the Orthodox churches into this, and monasteries and convents. And they do you know, sometimes the young monks and novitiates that would join in this would take up to 5 years in order to be able to begin the process of understanding what it was like to meditate. This is not something so, oh, goody, I'm going to meditate. Whoa. And it wasn't easy for me, but reading this little book was enough that got my interest, so that I started the process of sitting down and trying to get rid of the thoughts in my mind. That's what they say. And you breathe in and out with about a 4.5 second intake and a 4.5 second output, like this. And try and not wrestle ideas out of your mind, but let them literally float out of their own. And I did this for several weeks without much success, I must say, because my mind was so filled with stuff going on. now what I've chosen to do, and it's really only just 2 weeks, so I can't say that I'm, here to give everybody or even you an answer to this one. But this is what I've been doing. I've been sitting down and I choose a moment in which I'm tired or heavy laden somehow. In other words, I might have seen something on the iPad. I don't have television, so I might have seen something of the beating of the heads. And that really, it's like I am being attacked. I physically feel the impacts that I see. And I become so sad and so heavy with that. And the moment that I feel sad and heavy, I think, that's the time for a waypoint. So if I was driving my car over, Route 90 to see you, and I was feeling, blinking a bit and feeling I was a bit tired and I really ought to have a break, it's that kind of a feeling about my life. My life needs to slow down and stop just for where I need a refreshment. I need, like the salmon going upstream, to pull aside. I need to be with my friends in the kayak so that we're safer when we go down together. It's perfectly reasonable to want to have breaks like that. And there are even corporations nowadays that provide little rooms where you can go and zone out, which I think is a wonderful thought that people have. So now becomes the question for me as a person who is trying to live a life of applied faith. So my faith tells me that I'm supposed to love with everything that is me. And that if I can do that, that I might then be able to love my neighbor as I would love myself. I'd be able to balance out their need and my need, and I would be able to reach across and provide some kind of joyful connection with somebody else. I so want to do that. There's nothing I want to do with the rest of my life but to learn how to do that. And so the only thing, that's actually the whole idea of that is something that Jesus said once. And isn't it funny? Just you and I, we're fellow Christians, but you and I feel it's difficult when we actually mention his name between us, because we know we're being watched by other people, and other people can react badly. It's like a slap in the face for some people, or at least a bucket of cold water. And I don't want that to happen, and I know you don't want that to happen, but I could talk about Gandhi until I'm blue in the face, and everybody's happy enough with that. But anyway, he said it, so I want to do something about that. So this is what I do. I go and sit with him. He said it, and he said, if you're weary and heavy laden, come to me and I'll give you some rest. So that's my rest stop. So I've got this sofa here by my side, and it's quite comfortable. So I inch my way back into the sofa and I sit there. I used to do this in order to sit and listen. What do I do next? Now I don't want to sit and listen what to do next. I just want to sit. There's something strengthening about that, and something so restful about that. It's got my mind can keep on buzzing. It doesn't matter because my soul I get soul rest, which otherwise I'm so restless. So, and that's been happening several times during the week. And I have gone from darkness to light in this time. And I've been so excited to be able to share that with you. Not to show off, but just to say, it's been suggested, lots of people apparently do it, and I've never really had the success that I've had during this week of coming out of darkness into that light. Special.
Yeah, and that just even more so, like each person has their own place where rest is. And like it's important to find that for yourself and not like be bombarded by everyone else's ideas. I mean, even more
Well,
so.
and and let me say how much I appreciate you saying that, because when I was saying that to you, I was simply delighting in something that had happened in my life, and it wasn't something that I wanted, therefore, for you to take on exactly as I've said it. That's like me planting arugula seeds and it's coming up dandelions. I don't mind. I'm just thrilled if it comes up and bears life of any kind. And watching the cartoon is special. And because I loved it when I could see you on a kind of endless spool playing that cartoon in the back of your mind when you do that. That is very endearing and special. If we can come away from a brief stop and be restored, I think that gives enormous pleasure. I think that's true. Yeah. Wonderful. Good. So do you realize that this is your turn?
It is. I do. So what I liked a lot about thinking about like waypoints and ways which we can find rest was that moving on from that, like once you've found a little bit of rest, finding ways to get back into the river. Like sometimes once you get into the rest, you just want to stay there and do nothing else and just leave it. But I was trying to think of ways which I could get back into the river. And that's kind of what this background is about. This is like a painting of just blue that looks similar to water. And one of my many hobbies is like doing something creative, like painting or drawing or singing, that kind of thing. So I was thinking for this next week, we could think about or do finding a way to include important issues of now, like systemic racism, and ways in which we could take that and not just like sit down and think about it, because there's only so much of that you can do, but little ways to like keep moving forward with it, and or at least keep it in mind. So I would like to try like using that as a subject for creativity, like including that into my hobby in a little way, and not to like create an artwork to like post on Instagram or whatever, like not as like inspiration for a public art, but just as like a meditation process for me, as like, this is a hobby, this is a thing I like doing, and if I include like this important issue in it, then it's like a palatable way for me to like move out and back into the river of like continuing to think about important issues and not just like taking a break and then moving on to something else.
Yes.
Yeah, so like for me, a hobby is something like drawing like that, but I don't know if you have some sort of like creative thing you like doing, maybe a podcast you like listening to, or an article, or maybe you'll write something, and these aren't things that we need to share with each other. Like this is just a process. For example, my pastor has been, during the everything being closed, she's been sending out coloring pages that are like tableaus, like I can't think of the right word for it, but they're like scenes from the Bible basically, and you like, it's just a time for you to like sit and have an activity, but like the activity that you're doing is also like inspiring thought about that, but it's so much more approachable to be like, I'm gonna color, instead of like, I'm gonna fix racism. Like those are two very different things. But you're still like moving towards that and not going backwards or staying still.
You know, I once wrote a book called Flash of Silver, and that if you haven't got that book, I've got to make sure that Sky gets it to you.
I have at some point. I'm about to move, so everything's kind of
okay. Well, Flash of Silver, and I tried to imagine what it was like to be a fish going upstream against white water coming rushing towards me. And I've got to make it up that stream. There's something in me that propels me into doing that. And I felt the water pounding on my face, if you will, and it running through my gills. I was able to breathe because of that water. It was actually invigorating to that extent. And I knew I was powerful enough to make progress for a little while against that white water. And that's a beautiful idea that you have of re-entering the fray. By all means, pulling aside and being restored. What's the point of being restored unless there's some activity the other side of it? Otherwise, it's sloth. We're just pulling aside and burying our head in the sand and saying, all this go away. You know, I don't want to face it, but I do want to face it, and so do you. And we want to see the future more resilient than the past that we're leaving behind. I know that's true. So, good. And I have no idea how that was going to, but we do have a rule between us, and that is that I have to knee-jerk react to the idea. So I am just excited by that. And I've been restored during this last week by pulling aside, and I've told you I've come out into the brightness. So in my brightness, do you just want to be in brightness, or would you like to go upstream now? Yes, I would. I'd like to make a difference. In what way do I want to make a difference? Is it with racism? I'm not sure. You know, I've just watched the Baldwin movie, you know, I Am Not Your Negro. I don't know whether you've seen that, but that's available nowadays. And it's an extraordinary one. And there's also The 13th, which is a documentary about the 13th Amendment, which is extraordinary. So I've been immersed in trying to understand at another level, because I don't think that I'm racist. I don't. I'm so grateful to a Black church for praying and fasting for my family in such an extraordinary way as they did when we came to know the Lord because of a small inner city Black holiness Pentecostal church. So, I mean, I have my spiritual life and eternity in the hands of a small group of Black people who loved us unconditionally. So I don't have anything that I discern that, but I would love to throw myself at exploitive capitalism. That's it. Not entrepreneurial opportunity to serve people and gain cash flow as a result of it. I mean, setting out to exploit people's developing wants in people and then exploiting it. And I see so much disease and pollution and despair and distraction in that one. I just so love to be able to do something about that one. So, and I will join you completely and devote myself this week in these quieter times that I have to try and understand that. Thank you. That's good work. Yeah. Back into the froth again. Splendid.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you. And when are you moving? How long is it now?
It's about a month from now. Officially.
Okay. Have you got a place to go?
We're like in the middle of signing papers today, actually. So I'm kind of frazzled. But yeah.
Good. Kind of frazzled. But that's just whitewater, my dear.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this next week, we will be thinking about ways to jump back into the fray through smaller, tangible ways outside of like thinking at something head on, maybe more so through creativity or whatever that means to you.
Oh, and look, can I just go a PS on top of that statement?
Sure.
Within the gifting that you feel that you have personally.
Yeah.
It's a gift or talent that you've got. Think about that and think how to apply it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and something that you enjoy doing. Now, I'm not saying to take like the thing that you enjoy doing as a restful thing and like insert the world's problems into that. Don't do that. If that's the case, don't do that. Or at least that's what I'm trying not to do. Again, we're not telling anybody what to do. But my idea for me is to use something, a hobby like creativity, like drawing, is something that like for me needs a focus anyway in order for me to feel inspired to do it. And so like bringing in issues that I need to think about is like inspiration for the drawing as well as inspiration for the thinking. So it's another one of those win-win situations moving forward. So yeah, that's what we'll be thinking about this week. And we'll get back to you next week. This has been Tea at 3. I'm Faye Schmidt. This is Graham Kerr. We'll see you next week.
And Faith, all they have to do is press the little button which says subscribe, and something magical happens. A number changes by the number 1. And so if you ever do that, you can tell that you're one of those that are in that number. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. Bless you.
Madeline, from my perspective of who you're talking to and the history, to tell your goals and visions of where you are in your life in relationship to who you're talking to.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's just magical.
It's pretty crazy.
It's just magical. And that Graham continues to talk with me, a guy from Kansas. It's just, and Faith, you are the hero.
Yes, but I hadn't known that up until now.
I'm off the list now.